Here's a question that should bother you more than it probably does. What does it take for a person to cause enormous harm to other human beings systematically over decades, while being celebrated, protected, and surrounded by people who either didn't notice or didn't say anything? Not what it takes legally, not what it takes logistically, what it takes psychologically. Because the most disturbing thing about elite predators isn't what they do, it's how ordinary the architecture of their psychology looks, how familiar, how almost admirable, until the moment it isn't. And that gap between public perception and private reality is where we go today. Most people get it wrong about predators at the highest levels of power. They imagine them as outliers, monsters hiding in plain sight, secretly different from everyone around them, barely contained, one step from exposure. But that's not what psychology shows us. The most dangerous predators aren't barely contained, they're exquisitely controlled. They're not hiding who they are through effort and anxiety. They've constructed an identity so convincing, so internally consistent, so socially validated that they've stopped hiding at all. They genuinely believe the mask is the face. This is where the concept of moral disengagement becomes critical. Albert Bandura, a key psychologist, studied how people who consider themselves good manage to do terrible things without psychological collapse. He found that human capacity for self-justification is almost limitless when incentives are strong enough. Elite predators don't experience themselves as predators. They experience themselves as exceptional people operating by exceptional rules. In their world, evidence for this belief is everywhere. Think about what wealth and status do to a person's psychology over time. It's not just that rich and powerful people have more resources. Their entire social environment begins to reflect their own importance back at them. Every room they enter reorganizes itself around their presence. People laugh harder at their jokes. People defer to their opinions. People anticipate their needs before they're expressed. People compete for their attention. This consistent external validation does something to the brain that psychologists call self-serving attribution bias on a massive scale. Ordinary people have a mild version of this, attributing successes to qualities and failures to external circumstances. But when your environment confirms superiority, this bias doesn't stay mild. It compounds. It calcifies. It becomes the bedrock of how you understand your place in the world. And from that bedrock grows something particularly dangerous: entitlement. Not the petty, obvious entitlement of someone demanding to speak to a manager, but a deep, structural entitlement. The quiet, absolute conviction that different rules apply to you, not because you're above the rules consciously, but because the rules, in your lived experience, have genuinely never applied to you the way they apply to everyone else. This is the psychological ground in which predatory behavior takes root, not in chaos, but in order, not in insecurity, but in inflated security. Now let's talk about the dark triad, because it's impossible to have this conversation without it. Narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. 3 personality traits that in their extreme forms create a dangerous combination. But here's what's important about these traits in elite contexts. In moderate doses, they're not just tolerated in high-status environments, they're rewarded. The narcissistic conviction that you are uniquely talented and deserving in business, entertainment, politics, that reads as confidence, vision, leadership. The Machiavellian ability to read people's motivations and manipulate situations strategically without emotional interference, that reads as intelligence, strategic thinking, social mastery. The psychopathic emotional detachment, the ability to make high-stakes decisions without the anxiety that paralyzes ordinary people, that reads as strength under pressure, decisiveness, the quality of someone who has what it takes. The system doesn't just fail to screen out these traits at the elite level. It selects for them. It promotes them. It hands them money and influence and social proof, and then acts surprised when the same traits that enabled the rise also enable the harm. Elite predators don't arrive at the top already fully formed. They're built, partly, by the systems that reward them. And that's an uncomfortable thought because it means the problem isn't isolated to a few monstrous individuals. It's distributed through the structures we've all built together. But psychological traits alone don't explain the full picture, because there's a social dimension to how elite predators operate that is just as important as their individual psychology. And this is where the people around them become part of the story. One of the most well-documented phenomena in social psychology is the diffusion of responsibility. The more people aware of a problem, the less any individual feels personally responsible for addressing it. In a small group, everyone feels the weight of what they know. In a large, prestigious institution, that weight becomes almost weightless. Elite circles are particularly good at manufacturing this diffusion, because in these circles, silence isn't just passivity, it's actively incentivized. There is social capital attached to loyalty. There is professional risk attached to speaking. There is reputation at stake, not just yours, but the institutions, the networks, the brands that everyone in the circle has a stake in protecting. So people who are not themselves predatory, people who are genuinely decent, find themselves inside a system of cognitive dissonance. They know something. Maybe they've seen something or heard something or felt something that didn't sit right. And they have to find a way to hold that knowledge alongside their investment in the world that knowledge threatens. Human beings are extraordinarily creative when it comes to resolving cognitive dissonance in the direction of least disruption, so the mind begins to generate explanations. That wasn't what it looked like. Those allegations are exaggerated. He's difficult, but he's not dangerous. I'm sure it's complicated. This is how it works at this level. I don't have the full picture. It's not my place. This is impression management operating at a systemic level, not just the predator managing their own image, but an entire ecosystem of relationships, incentives, and social norms conspiring to manage it for them, without coordination, without conspiracy, just through the ordinary psychology of people protecting what they have. And the predator understands this, consciously or intuitively. They understand that their greatest protection isn't legal, it isn't physical, it's social. It's the investment other people have in not seeing what they don't want to see. This is why access is so central to how elite predators operate. They don't seek victims randomly. They seek victims who are already within the architecture of their power. People whose credibility can be undermined by proximity. People who have something to lose by speaking. People who will be evaluated against the weight of the predator's reputation and found, by default, less believable. And the predator calibrates their risk accordingly. This is the calculated risk-taking that distinguishes truly dangerous individuals. They're not impulsive. They're not reckless. Every behavior exists within a sophisticated, even if unconscious, cost-benefit analysis. They know who is safe to target.